So Billy just did a really great job at introducing the purpose for our study, and so we built our research questions around that. So our first question is the SOS program effective at improving students' knowledge about depression and suicide? Our second question is, are attitudes towards seeking help for depression and or suicidal behavior of participants of the SOS program different than attitudes of non-participants? Our third question is, how do school staff perceive their roles in suicide prevention programs, and how do they view the efficacy of their school's prevention efforts? So easily we are going to answer these first two questions or get an idea about the answer for these two questions from using our SOS post-test. The post-test is a three-part assessment that has, the first part is a true-false section talking about the knowledge of depression and suicide behaviors. The second part and third part also talk about attitudes toward depression and suicide and help-seeking behaviors. So that would be answered by question number 2. So this is for part 1 of the post-test. Parts 2 and 3 of the post-test will be measured this way, and our third one will be measured with our qualitative data collection. So our study used the quantitative data collection and qualitative data collection methods. So quantitative, we utilized that SOS post-test that I was just talking about, and we used that at Durham School of the Arts and Northwake College and Career Academy. So at DSA, Derek administered the post-test to 9 students that were recommended from the counseling department. He administered the test individually and then supported the students as needed if any thoughts came up as a result of participating in the activity. At Northwake, I administered the SOS lesson to 2 class periods of health and physical education, and so our N was about 45 students after parents were able to opt their students out of participating in the program. So I delivered the SOS program to these students, and then I administered the post-test via Google Forms. And then students were supported as needed. After the post-test was delivered, students were given a student screening card where they were able, or a student request card, and they were able to indicate whether or not they need to speak with a counselor that day. And if they answered yes to any 3 questions that have to do with suicidal behavior, then we do follow up with those students during the day. So our qualitative data collection was at Durham School of the Arts and at Sanderson. So Derek interviewed 7 staff members in a semi-structured interview format, and he interviewed the individuals individually. And Billy did the same thing, but with 8 staff members at Sanderson High School. They used the same semi-structured interview format for both sites, and both sites interviewed a really good mixture of counselors, administrators, and teachers. So here are results for the first part of the SOS post-test. And so this is the first section talking about the knowledge of suicide and depression. And it was a true-false section. So we have each question listed here, and then we have the percentage of students that got that question correct. So overall, you can see on 100% of these items, Northwake College and Career Academy, i.e. the students that actually participated in the program, did much better than students that did not participate in the program. So our second table talks about the second section of the SOS post-test, and this is just measuring student attitudes about suicide and depression. So again, we have the 4 questions in this section on the left-hand side, and then these numbers are the mean and mode for the answers for our samples from each site. So the means were calculated because the responses for these were a 5-point Likert scale, 1 being strongly disagree and 5 being strongly agree. And so we calculated the mean for each site by assigning those numbers. So 1 was strongly disagree and 5 was strongly agree. And so we calculated the mean for those, and you can see overall on the mean measures that it's pretty evenly split with the most adaptive behavior. So with the better, basically the better answer. So DSA was more adaptive on question 1 and 3, whereas Northwake College and Career Academy students were more adaptive on questions 2 and 4. So overall, there's not a lot of difference. And you can see the mode measures. The only difference was Northwake College and Career Academy mode answers were more adaptive on this question. But overall, they were the same on all the other questions. So let's look back at our question or our research question 1. So is the SOS program effective at improving students' knowledge about depression and suicide? Looking again at our table 1, we can conclude that there is a difference between the populations, and that suggests that the signs of suicide is effective at improving student knowledge about depression and suicide. So now we're looking at the third part of the SOS post-test, and we can see the same format as the second part of the post-test. So we have this section just measures student attitudes about seeking help for a friend. And so each question started with this question stem, or there was like a question stem, and then they would fill in whether they agreed or disagreed on the Likert scale with each one of these sentence enders, I guess. I don't know what you would call those. So we have the first one is I wouldn't know what to do, and so that would fill in for the sentence stem. So looking at these items again, we have the mean data on these two columns, and the mode data, on these two columns, so that we can easily compare. And you can see that overall Northwake students did answer in a more adaptive way when using these help-seeking behaviors. So looking at research question 2, our question again is, are attitudes towards seeking help for depression and or suicide behavior of participants of the SOS program different than attitudes of non-participants? We can see that they are different, but we're not sure if it's not a large difference, because again, if we're looking at table 2, you can see that DSA was pretty even split with Northwake. And then here you can see that Northwake is more adaptive on those behaviors. So we can say, yes, they are different, but again, we need more research to substantiate the claim that SOS was the reason why those attitudes were different.